Thank you, Foreign Minister. This is a question for Anadolu Agency, Turkey. I want to ask you about US President Donald Trump announced his plans to take over and own Gaza and resettle the Palestinians living there to neighboring countries. So this plan was announced last month. I wonder, what do you think about this plan, this US plan, and future development of Gaza, and what role China might play in for the peace and stability in the Middle East? Thank you.
土耳其阿纳多卢通讯社，特朗普总统上个月宣称将接管并拥有加沙地带，将居住在这一地区的巴勒斯坦人迁至邻近国家。您如何看待美方的这一计划和加沙地带的未来发展？中方在中东和平稳定中扮演什么角色？
你替前面那个阿拉伯小伙子提的这个问题。
You actually raised the question for the Arab guy before you, and on behalf of all the brothers and sisters of the Arab world. And, I think it's a very good question. Gaza belongs to the Palestinian people. It is an inseparable part of the Palestinian territory. Changing its status by forceful means will not bring about peace, but only new chaos. We support the plan for restoring peace in Gaza, initiated by Egypt and other Arab countries. The will of the people must not be defied, and the principle of justice must not be abandoned. If a major country truly cares about the people in Gaza, it should promote comprehensive and lasting ceasefire, ramp up humanitarian assistance, observe the principle of Palestinians governing Palestine, and contribute to the reconstruction in Gaza. Without Middle East peace, the world will not be stable. The Palestinian question has always been at the heart of the Middle East issue. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict takes place again and again simply because the two-state solution is only half achieved. The state of Israel has long been a reality, but the state of Palestine is still far beyond reach. Going forward, the international community should focus more on the two-state solution and give more support to independent statehood for Palestine. Only then could Palestine and Israel truly coexist in peace, and the Arab and Jewish peoples live side by side in enduring amity. To this end, first, all Palestinian factions need to deliver on the Beijing Declaration to achieve unity and self-strengthening. All parties in the Middle East need to rise above differences to support Palestinian statehood, and the international community need to build consensus and promote peace between Palestine and Israel. China is a strategic partner of Middle East countries and a sincere friend of our Arab brothers. We will continue to strive resolutely for justice, peace, and development for the Middle East people, and support countries in the region in taking their future in their own hands, independently exploring their development path, and realizing the dream of peace and revitalization at an early date.
Thank you. A question from Bloomberg. Direct talks have started between the United States and Russia on ending the war in Ukraine. President Trump has said he would welcome China's help in the process. What role does China think it could play? And under what circumstances would China consider sending peacekeeping troops into Ukraine? Thank you.
彭博社，美国和俄罗斯已就结束乌克兰危机展开直接谈判。特朗普总统表示，欢迎中国在这一过程中提供帮助。中方认为应该为此发挥什么作用？什么情况下中方会考虑派遣维和部队？
中方从危机爆发第一天起
Since the first day of the crisis, China has been calling for political settlement through dialogue and negotiation, and has been actively working for peace and pushing for talks. Shortly after the eruption of the crisis, President Xi Jinping put forth 4 points on what must be done, an important proposition pointed out the way for our efforts. Hence, China released its position paper on the crisis, sent its special representative for subtle diplomacy, and initiated the Group of Friends for Peace at the United Nations, together with Brazil and other Global South countries. Our stance has always been objective and impartial. Our voice has always been calm and balanced. And our purpose is to create conditions and build consensus for resolving the crisis. China welcomes and supports all efforts for peace. At the same time, it is also important to see the complexity of the causes of the crisis. As a Chinese proverb puts it, it takes more than 1 cold day to freeze 3 feet of ice. Likewise, melting down thick ice cannot be done overnight. No one wins in a conflict, but everyone gains in peace. The negotiation table is where the conflict ends and peace starts. Although the relevant parties have not had their positions fully aligned, they all hope to have a fair and durable peace deal that is binding and accepted by all the parties concerned. And that is a valuable common point, and all the parties should jointly strive for it. China is ready to work with the international community in light of the wills of the parties to the conflict to continue to play a constructive role in resolving the crisis and realizing lasting peace. One last point on the question. The Ukraine crisis has been dragging on for over 3 years. In hindsight, the tragedy could have been avoided. All parties should learn something from the crisis. Among many others, security should be mutual and equal, and no country should build its security on the insecurity of another. We should advocate and act on the new vision of common, comprehensive, cooperative, and sustainable security. And that is the way to truly realizing lasting peace and security on the Eurasian continent and across the world. Thank you.
Phoenix TV. For some time, there has been a narrative in a few countries that Resolution 2758 of the UN General Assembly is not equivalent to the One China principle, does not make clear of the sovereignty of Taiwan, and does not prevent Taiwan from participating in international organizations. What is your response to that?
Such a narrative is a blatant challenge to the authority of the UN and the post-war international order. It is extremely absurd and dangerous. Those who spread it could use some help to improve their common sense. Taiwan is an inalienable part of China's territory. This is the history and the reality. This year marks the 80th anniversary of the recovery of Taiwan. 8 decades ago, the victory of the Chinese people's war of resistance against Japanese aggression put Taiwan back under China's sovereign jurisdiction. Both the Cairo Declaration and the Potsdam Proclamation, issued by major victorious nations of World War II, stated in explicit terms that Taiwan is a territory that Japan has stolen from the Chinese and shall be restored to China. Japan also accepted the terms of the Potsdam Proclamation and announced its unconditional surrender. All these have confirmed China's sovereignty over Taiwan and formed an important part of the post-war international order. Resolution 2758 was later adopted in 1971 by the UN General Assembly with an overwhelming majority. It decides to restore all the lawful rights of the People's Republic of China at the UN and expel forthwith the representatives of the Taiwan authorities from the UN and all the organizations related to it. Once and for all, this resolution resolved the issue of the representation of the whole of China, including Taiwan, in the UN, and precluded any possibility of creating 2 Chinas or 1 China, 1 Taiwan. The only reference to the Taiwan region in the UN is Taiwan province of China. Taiwan is never a country, not in the past and never in the future. To clamor for Taiwan independence is to split the country. To support Taiwan independence is to interfere in China's internal affairs, and to connive at Taiwan independence is to undermine the stability of the Taiwan Strait. The principle of sovereignty is the cornerstone of the UN Charter. No country or individual should adopt any kind of double standard. Respect for all countries' sovereignty and territorial integrity should mean support for China's complete reunification. And commitment to one China should mean opposition to any form of Taiwan independence. Realizing China's complete reunification is a shared aspiration of the Chinese nation. It is an inevitable trend, and it is what the greater national interests entail. Seeking Taiwan independence is doomed to backfire, and using Taiwan to contain China will be nothing but a futile attempt. China will realize reunification, and this is unstoppable. Thank you.
联合早报 What progress have China and ASEAN countries made in the consultations on a code of conduct in the South China Sea, and what are the major obstacles? Will frictions between China and the Philippines in the South China Sea over the past year dim the prospects for consultations? And how does China plan to enhance mutual trust with ASEAN countries and remove the roadblocks in order to achieve an early conclusion of the COC?
Last year, with joint efforts by China and ASEAN countries, the South China Sea maintained peace and stability and remained the safest and busiest waters for international navigation and overflight. China and Indonesia signed an intergovernmental document on maritime joint development. China and Malaysia launched a bilateral dialogue on management of maritime issues. China has established maritime dialogue mechanisms with all countries concerned. These are proof that there is no problem that cannot be solved through dialogue and no goals that cannot be reached with cooperation. You mentioned the frictions between China and the Philippines. At an international forum a few weeks ago, an official from a regional country noted that the Philippine moves to create frictions are like a shadow play, which is a vivid analogy. For every move on the sea by the Philippines, there is a screenplay written by external forces. The show is live streamed by Western media, and the plot is invariably to smear China. People are no longer interested in watching the same performance again and again. China will continue to safeguard its territorial sovereignty and maritime rights and interests in accordance with law. When managing the situation at Renaijiao and Huangyandao, we will also take into account the actual conditions out of the humanitarian spirit. But let me make it clear that infringement and provocation will backfire, and those acting as others' chess pieces are bound to be discarded. To realize good neighborliness, lasting peace and security in the South China Sea, one needs trust and also rules. The key is to implement the Declaration on the Conduct of Parties in the South China Sea, or DOC, and develop a sound COC. With China's facilitation, consultations on the COC are accelerating, and the third reading of the text has been completed. We have full confidence in the prospect of concluding the COC. China is ready to work with ASEAN countries to step up communication, stay clear of disturbances, and build consensus for an early conclusion of the COC, so as to make the South China Sea a sea of peace, friendship, and cooperation. Thank you.
Itar TASS. There have been frequent interactions between the leaders of China and Russia since last year, and China-Russia relations have enjoyed sound development. At the same time, some are wondering whether recent Russia-US talks would affect China-Russia strategic coordination. What is your take on China-Russia relations?
I
have been asked about China-Russia relations every year, although from different perspectives each time. What I want to emphasize is that no matter how the international landscape evolves, the historical logic of China-Russia friendship will not change. and its internal driving force will not diminish. Based on deep reflections and historical experience, China and Russia have decided to forge everlasting good neighborliness and friendship, conduct comprehensive strategic coordination, and pursue mutual benefit cooperation and win-win. Because this best serves the fundamental interests of the two peoples and conforms the trend of our times. The two countries have found a path of non-alliance, non-confrontation, and not targeting any third party in developing their relations. It is a pioneering effort in forging a new model of major country relations and has set a fine example for relations between neighboring countries. A mature, resilient, and stable China-Russia relationship will not be swayed by any turn of events, let alone be subject to interference by any third party. It is a constant in a turbulent world, rather than a variable in geopolitical games. Last year marked the 75th anniversary of China-Russia diplomatic relations. President Xi Jinping and President Vladimir Putin had 3 face-to-face meetings, jointly steering the China-Russia comprehensive strategic partnership of coordination for the new era into a new historical stage. This year will be the 80th anniversary of the victory in World War II. Back then, China and Russia fought valiantly in the main theaters of Asia and Europe, respectively. The two nations made immense sacrifice for and major historic contributions to the victory of the World Anti-Fascist War. The two sides will take the opportunity of joint commemoration of this important historical milestone to advocate the correct historical view of World War II, defend its victorious outcomes, uphold the UN-centered international system, and promote a more just and equitable international order. Thank you.
American Secretary of State made his first trip to Latin America last month and threatened to take measures against Panama if it didn't distance itself from China. Other countries in the region have also been threatened. What will China do to counter this pressure? And will this be a topic at the upcoming China Select Forum?
巴西圣保罗夜报上个月，美国国务卿首访拉丁美洲，并威胁称，如果巴拿马不与中国保持距离，美国将对巴拿马采取措施。拉美其他国家也受到了类似的威胁。中国将如何应对这种压力？这会成为即将召开的中拉论坛的一个议题吗？
China's cooperation with Latin American and Caribbean, or LAC countries, is South-South cooperation. There is only mutual support, no geopolitical calculations. In its engagement with LAC countries, China follows the principles of equality and mutual benefit, and never seeks sphere of influence or targets any party. What people in LAC countries want is to build their own home, not to become someone's backyard. What they aspire to is independence and self-decision, not the Monroe Doctrine. Cooperation between China and LAC countries has won popular support because it respects the will of the people, meets the needs of regional countries, and provides reliable options and broad prospects for the revitalization of the region. In the new era, under the guidance of President Xi Jinping and the leaders of LAC countries, and boosted by the China CELAC Forum, we have produced fruitful outcomes in building the China LAC community with a future and delivered benefits to all our people. This year marks the 10th anniversary of the formal launch of the China CELAC Forum. China will host the 4th ministerial meeting of the forum in the first half of this year. Taking this as an opportunity, the two sides will come together over the mountains and oceans and regardless of all disturbances to take China-LAC cooperation to a high level. Thank you.
CNN. President Trump has adopted an America First policy after his return to the White House. Less than 2 months into his presidency, he has spoken about withdrawing from international organizations and treaties and suspending U.S. aid to foreign countries, and has threatened traditional allies. Do you think this is good for China's development? Does it provide a strategic opportunity for China to play a bigger role in international affairs and reshape the global landscape?
This is a very sharp question, but I'm ready to share with you my views. There are more than 190 countries in the world. Should everyone stress my country first and obsess over a position of strength, the law of the jungle would reign the world again. Smaller and weaker countries would bear the brunt first, and international norms and order would take a body blow. At the Paris conference over 100 years ago, the Chinese asked a question resonating across the ages. Does right prevail over might? Or does might make right? New China stands firm on the side of international justice and resolutely opposes power politics and hegemony. History should move forward, not backward. A big country should honor its international obligations and fulfill its due responsibilities. It should not put selfish interests before principles, still less wield its power to bully the weak. A saying in the West goes, there are no eternal friends, only permanent interests. But we in China believe that friends should be permanent, and we should pursue common interests. With a keen understanding of the trend of history and our times, President Xi Jinping has proposed building a community with a shared future for mankind and called on all countries to transcend disagreements and differences, jointly protect our only planet, and develop together the global village as our common home. This great vision reflects not only the fine tradition of Chinese civilization that the world belongs to all, but also the internationalist commitment of Chinese communists. It enables us to see the well-being of the entire humanity, just like having a bird's-eye view of all the mountains that will look small when we stand on a peak, as described in an ancient Chinese poem. We are pleased to see that more and more countries have joined the cause of building a community with a shared future for mankind. Over 100 countries support China's Global Development Initiative, Global Security Initiative, and Global Civilization Initiative, and that more than 3/4 of countries across the world have joined the family of Belt and Road cooperation. History will prove that a real winner is the one that keeps in mind the interests of all, and that a community with a shared future for mankind will ensure the world belongs to everyone, and that everyone will have a bright future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Foreign Minister. My question relates to India-China relations. The two countries finally managed to achieve a breakthrough last year after a prolonged, perhaps over 4 years of rather freeze in relations. The leaders of the two countries met at Kazan last year on the sidelines of the BRICS, followed by a series of meetings, including your own meetings with our National Security Advisor under the Special Representative for the Boundary Mechanism, as well as our own Foreign Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar. So how do you see the relations progressing in this very turbulent times? We would like to hear your thoughts on the future of India-China relations as China sees it. Thank you.
印度报业托拉斯在印中领导人、外长、特代等高层互动的推动下，两国终于成功实现关系突破。您如何看待在当前全球剧烈变革的背景下两国关系的发展？两个国家能否建立持久的关系？
China-India relations have made positive strides over the past year. The successful meeting between President Xi Jinping and Prime Minister Narendra Modi in Kazan last October provided strategic guidance for the improvement and development of the bilateral ties. Both sides have earnestly followed through on the important common understandings of our leaders, strengthened exchanges in practical cooperation, at all levels and achieved a series of positive outcomes. China and India are each other's largest neighbors. China always believes that the two should be partners that contribute to each other's success. A cooperative pas de deux of the dragon and the elephant is the only right choice for both sides. As the two largest developing countries, China and India have a shared task to accelerate our country's development and revitalization. There is every reason for us to support each other rather than undercut each other, work with each other rather than guard against each other. This is the path that truly serves the fundamental interests of the two countries and peoples. As two ancient civilizations, we have enough wisdom and capability to maintain peace and tranquility in the border areas, pending a fair and reasonable solution. We should never allow bilateral relations to be defined by the boundary question, or let specific differences affect the overall picture of our bilateral ties. As important members of the Global South, we have the responsibility to take the lead in opposing hegemonism and power politics. We must not only safeguard the legitimate rights and interests of our countries, but also uphold the basic norms governing international relations. When China and India join hands, the prospects for greater democracy in international relations and a stronger Global South will improve greatly. This year marks the 75th anniversary of China-India diplomatic relations. China stands ready to work with India to sum up past experience, forge a path forward, and advance China-India relations on the track of sound and stable.
GTN, the impressive emergence of DeepSeek showcases China's innovation capability in AI. Some say that the U.S. finds it unacceptable to let China get ahead in science and technology. Its instinctive response to China's technological rise is, if you can't win, just snatch it. If you can't get it, just destroy it. What is your view on China-U.S. competition in science and technology?
Recently, China's scientific and technological innovation has more than once defied people's imagination. From breakthroughs in atomic bombs, missiles, and satellites decades ago, to the Shenzhou space missions, to the China Lunar Exploration Program, and to 5G, quantum computing, and DeepSeek. Generations of the Chinese people have never stopped in their endeavor for innovation, and we're witnessing an ever-expanding horizon for China to become a sci-tech powerhouse. Admittedly, the journey has not been smooth, be it missile technology, space science, or chip making. Unjustified external suppression has never stopped. But where there is blockade, there is breakthrough. Where there is suppression, there is innovation. And where there is the fiercest storm, there is the platform launching China's science and technology skyward, like the Chinese mythological hero哪吒soaring into the heavens. As well put by an ancient Chinese verse, no mountain can stop the surging flow of the mighty river. Likewise, hypotheses and small yards cannot suppress the spirit of innovation, and decoupling and supply chain disruptions will only lead to self-isolation. Science and technology should not be used to put up an iron curtain. It should be the wealth that benefits all and is shared by all. To promote common development of humanity, China has taken real measures to implement the Global AI Governance Initiative put forth by President Xi Jinping, and released the AI Capacity Building Action Plan for Good and for All. We have also proposed the Initiative on International Cooperation in Open Science together with Brazil, South Africa, and the African Union, calling on all to give priority to sci-tech capacity building of the global south.
From Reuters, Trump has returned to the White House, and immediately he has imposed fresh tariffs on China over fentanyl. At the same time, he wants to build a good relationship with China. So my question is, how differently will China engage with the Trump administration over the next 4 years compared with Trump's first term? Thank you.
路透社，特朗普重返白宫不久，就以芬太尼为由对中国输美商品加征新一轮关税。与此同时，他也表示希望同中国建立良好的关系。与特朗普第一任期相比，中方在接下来的4年里与特朗普政府打交道的方式将有何不同？
相互尊重
Mutual respect is a basic norm governing state-to-state relations. It is also an important prerequisite for China-US relations. No country should fantasize that it can suppress China and maintain good relations with China at the same time. Such two-faced acts are not good for the stability of bilateral relations or for building mutual trust. You talk about fentanyl. On fentanyl, it must be made clear at the outset that China always takes resolute measures against drug trafficking manufacturing, and China has put in place the toughest and most comprehensive counter-narcotics policies in today's world. As early as in 2019, upon the request of the US side, China scheduled all fentanyl-related substances, the first country in the world to do so. But the abuse of fentanyl in the United States is a problem that must be confronted and resolved by the United States itself. On humanitarian grounds, China has been assisting the United States in various ways. The United States should not return good with evil or even impose arbitrary tariffs. No responsible major country should do that. As the Chinese saying goes, if one's action fails, look for the reason within oneself. The United States should go over what has actually happened. What has it achieved from tariff and trade wars these years? Has its trade deficit widened or narrowed? Has its manufacturing become more competitive or less competitive? Has U.S. inflation gone up or down? Has the life of its people got better or worse? China-US business relations are based on two-way and reciprocal interactions. Cooperation will bring about mutual benefit and win-win. And China will definitely take countermeasures in response to arbitrary pressure. As the world's largest developing and developed countries, respectively, China and the United States will stay on this planet for a long time. They must, therefore, seek peaceful coexistence. As President Xi Jinping noted in his telephone call with President Donald Trump earlier this year, confrontation and conflict should not be an option. Given the extensive common interests and broad space for cooperation, it is fully possible for China and the United States to become partners, helping each other succeed and prosper together. China will stay committed to the three principles proposed by President Xi Jinping: mutual respect, peaceful coexistence, and win-win cooperation in promoting steady, sound, and sustainable development of China-US relations. At the same time, we hope that the US side will listen to the calls of the two peoples, see clearly the trend of the times, take an objective and rational view of China's development, engage proactively with China in practical exchanges, and work together with China to pursue the right way of getting along with each other to the benefit of the two countries and the whole world. Thank you.
Global Times. Some believe that the international order is at the most dangerous moment since World War II, and that the role and authority of the United Nations are being undermined. How can this situation be addressed, and what role will China play?
This year marks the 80th anniversary of the UN. Around the end of World War II, the most important decision the international community made was to establish the UN and make it the primary platform for maintaining world peace and promoting global governance. Facts have shown that the UN has withstood tests and has been instrumental. Today there have been fundamental changes in the world situation. Unilateralism is on the rise, and power politics runs rampant. Some countries have voiced skepticism of one kind or another about the UN, but China believes that the more complex the problems, the greater the need to accentuate the important status of the UN. The more pressing the challenges, the greater the need to uphold the due authority of the UN. All countries want to prevent the world from returning to the law of the jungle. To this end, the first thing to do is to cement the cornerstone of sovereign equality. All countries, regardless of their size and strength, should be recognized as equal members of the international community. Those with stronger arms and bigger fists should not be allowed to call the shots. Second, the principle of fairness and justice must be upheld. International affairs must not be monopolized by a small number of countries. Greater attention should be given to the voice of the global South. The legitimate rights and interests of all countries should be fully protected. Third, multilateralism must be observed. Countries should stay committed to the principles of extensive consultation, joint contribution, and shared benefit. Replace bloc confrontation with inclusive collaboration and shatter small circles with greater solidarity. Fourth, the authority of the international rule of law must be strengthened. Major countries in particular should take the lead in upholding integrity, embracing the rule of law, and opposing double standards and selective application. Still less should they resort to bullying, monopoly, trickery, or extortion. China is a founder and beneficiary of the post-World War II international order. Naturally, we are an advocate and builder of it as well. We have no intentions to start all over again, nor do we support any country's attempt to overturn the current order. China is well aware of its international responsibility as a permanent member of the UN Security Council. It will firmly safeguard the central role of the UN, come forward to be a pillar of the multilateral system, and speak up for justice for the global South. Last month, at the UN Security Council, China chaired the high-level meeting on practicing multilateralism, reforming and improving global governance. More than 100 countries signed up to attend, kicking off the commemorations of UN's 80th anniversary. China is ready to work with all sides to reflect on the founding vision of the UN, observe the purposes and principles of the UN Charter, and build a more just and equitable global governance system. Thank you.
I represent Associated Press of Pakistan. China attaches great importance to its relation with neighboring countries. However, the US deployment of mid-range capability missile system in the region has caused tension. Some of China's neighbors face rising security risks which add uncertainty to China's neighboring environment. While China's neighbors expect to share in the benefit of China's development, they worry about the potential impact of Chinese goods on their own industries. How does China see the current situation in its neighborhood? Any new consideration for China's foreign policy towards this region? Thank you.
巴基斯坦通讯社。中国高度重视与周边国家的关系，但美国在本地区部署中导，挑动矛盾，一些邻国安全风险高企，给中国周边增添了不稳定因素。周边国家期待分享中国发展的红利，但也担心中国商品对本国产业带来冲击。中国如何看待周边形势？对周边外交有哪些新的考量？
Since the beginning of this century, Asia has maintained rapid growth and become a leading force for global development and a shining example of peace and stability. This has not come easily and should be cherished with great care. Asia is where China calls home and builds its future. It is also the common home for China and fellow Asian countries. Following the principle of amity, sincerity, mutual benefit, and inclusiveness on neighborhood diplomacy put forward by President Xi Jinping, China has opened up new prospects in developing friendship and cooperation with its neighbors. To date, China has reached common understanding on building a community with a shared future with 17 neighboring countries. In two clusters in the Indochina Peninsula and Central Asia, respectively. In our neighborhood, we have signed Belt and Road cooperation agreements with 25 countries and remained the largest trading partner of 18 countries. Today's China is an anchor of stability, engine of economic development, and pillar of regional security in Asia. That said, it is common for neighbors to not agree on everything. Issues left from the past and the conflicts of immediate interest should both be properly handled. But we believe that harmony is key to a prosperous family in all endeavors. As long as we remain committed to the vision of a common home, stick to the goal of building a community with a shared future, and follow the principles of equal-footed consultation, mutual understanding, and mutual accommodation, we will be able to resolve differences, work with one another, and achieve win-win results. In the meantime, China will continue to open wider to neighboring countries, including through unilateral initiatives, and share more development benefits with its neighbors. You mentioned the U.S. deployment of mid-range missile systems in the region. China is firmly opposed to such attempt. And it is not welcomed by regional countries either. Years have passed since the U.S. released its Indo Pacific strategy, but what has it done for regional countries? Nothing, except for stirring up troubles and creating disputes. It has proved to be more of a disruptive factor than a constructive contributor. Asia is not an arena for big power rivalry. It should become a demonstration field for international cooperation. We believe that it's important to practice open regionalism and share in Asia's development opportunities based on mutual respect and win-win cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, Foreign Minister. Question from AFP. China and the European Union are in the middle of long-running commercial tensions involving investigations over the renewables and electric vehicles sectors in particular. How does the Foreign Ministry see relations with the bloc evolving despite those tensions? Thank you.
法新社，中欧面临长期紧张的经贸关系，尤其是在新能源和电动车领域。在这种情况下，外交部如何看待中欧关系发展？
This year marks the 50th anniversary of the China-EU diplomatic ties. This is an important year. In this half-century-long relationship, the most valuable asset is mutual respect. The most powerful impetus is mutual benefit. The greatest unifying consensus is multilateralism, and the most accurate characterization is cooperation partner. Over the past 5 decades, China-EU cooperation has come a long way. Bilateral trade has expanded from $2.4 billion to $780 billion. Investment has increased from almost zero to close to $260 billion. The China-Europe Railway Express has run more than 100,000 cargo trips and become a golden passage connecting Asia and Europe. 50 years on, China and the EU jointly make up over 1/3 of the world economy, and the cooperation between the two has a greater strategic value and global influence. A healthy and stable relationship will lift up both sides and make for a brighter world. In his phone call with President of the European Council, Antonio Costa, earlier this year, President Xi Jinping noted that when the world becomes more challenging and complex, China and the EU have more reason to renew their purpose in establishing diplomatic relations, strengthen strategic communication, enhance strategic mutual trust, and maintaining this partnership relationship. China remains confident in Europe and believes Europe can be a trustworthy partner. The two sides have the capacity and wisdom to properly resolve pending issues through friendly consultation and jointly usher in another promising 50 years. Thank you.
Kyoto News. Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba met with Chinese President Xi Jinping in Peru last November. This was then followed by visits to China by the Japanese Foreign Minister and business leaders. China-Japan ties are warming, but issues remain. How would you comment on the current relationship? What more can we expect in measures to promote cooperation in order for this strategic relationship of mutual benefit to advance across the board? And does China have plans to respond favorably to Japan's concerns and expectations on issues concerning aquatic imports and China's business environment?
Last November, leaders of the two countries reached important understandings on following the four political documents between China and Japan, comprehensively advancing the strategic relationship of mutual benefit, and building a constructive and stable China-Japan relationship fit for the new era. With concerted efforts, bilateral relations have demonstrated a momentum of improvement and growth. We welcome enhanced exchanges, deeper mutually beneficial cooperation, and stronger goodwill between all sectors of our society. All these are in the long-term interests of both sides. As for the specific concerns of the Japanese side in your question, China will handle them responsibly and properly in accordance with laws and regulations. Here, let me highlight another point. This year marks the 80th anniversary of the victory of the Chinese People's War of resistance against Japanese aggression. To remember history, one can better shape the future. To forget history, one may lose his direction going forward. The Japanese militarists committed heinous crimes to the people in China and all over Asia. They brought immense suffering for the Japanese side as well. Guarding against the revival of militarism is a duty that Japan must carry out without a moment of relaxation. This is also the firm resolve of the Chinese and Asian people that will not be challenged. In the test of conscience and integrity, the right choice for Japan is to abide by the principles enshrined in its pacifist constitution and keep to the path of peaceful development. The One China principle is the political foundation for China-Japan relations. 80 years have passed since Taiwan returned to China, yet some unrepentant individuals in Japan are still working in the shadows with the so-called Taiwan independence forces. Here is our message for them. Stop the propaganda that a Taiwan emergency is a Japanese emergency. The truth is, to provoke trouble in the name of Taiwan is to invite trouble to Japan. There is a long history of ties between China and Japan. Japan knows best that China is a peace-loving country and a trustworthy neighbor with good intentions. For more than 1,000 years, China has meant opportunities, not threats for Japan. What is the right way of being neighbors, and which is the right side of history? Faced with historical transformations, the bright minds in Japan need to think carefully about these questions and follow good advice.